Welcome to the Inspirational Living podcast, brought to you in part by Book of Zen, makers of wearable inspiration for a better world. Today's podcast has been edited and adapted from a lecture delivered by Neville Goddard in 1952. Desire is the springboard of action, for you cannot move without desire. Ask yourself what you feel called to do, and then formulate your desire. Feel its presence, and you have granted yourself the desire's fulfillment. Human life is nothing more than the appeasement of hunger, and the infinite series of levels of awareness is the means to satisfy that hunger. Health is a desire, a hunger which can be appeased when the idea is formulated in your mind that you are healthy. The same is true for wealth, peace, harmony, or fame, for all of these are states of awareness. Identify yourself with the state desired. Persist in this identification, and because you and God are one consciousness, what you are conscious of, you manifest. The Christian cross is but a symbol of suffering. There is no physical cross upon which a man was nailed, but a body of beliefs which humanity wears. Jesus said, "Unless you lift up your cross and follow me, you are unworthy of me." Lift up your cross by raising your awareness, for your I amness is the creator of your world. As an individual, you move and live in time, but your true being is in eternity. Think of the vertical line of the cross as the line of being upon which there are unnumbered levels of awareness. Time cannot make you better or wiser. In fact, time cannot do a thing towards changing your level of being. For change is all on the vertical line where you move to higher or lower levels of your own being. Because change is imminent, we speak of it as infinite imminence, as nearer than near and sooner than now. The person you would like to be is imminent, is nearer than near. The ideal you dream of being is sooner than now, and is brought into being by a change in your reactions to life. The only work you are called upon to do is work on yourself. Start this work by observing your reactions to life. Remember, your future is not being developed. It already is. The time track is complete, as well as all of the events you can encounter. As you move up or down the level of your being, changes will occur in your life. You are now resting at a certain level. Arise to take up your couch and walk, by breaking the threads of life that bind you to the state you are in now. Break these threads by changing your thoughts, for only as you rise within will you find a corresponding change without. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if you were all tenderness, all love, all generosity? Aim for those feelings, and then watch how your relationships to them builds. It is here in the midst of the storms of life that you work this law. If you identify yourself with an unlovely state, you will find yourself sinking into it. But you can lift up your cross by breaking your automatic, mechanical reactions to life and sacrificing your present level of being. This message, this teaching, comes not to bring peace but a sword. It comes to set you at variance against your friends and family. This word is sharper than any two-edged sword, for it is capable of piercing the soul and spirit. I am not suggesting that you turn against your earthly loved ones, but that you turn against the psychological ideas that govern your behavior and the dominant mood which governs your actions and reactions to life. If at this moment your feelings are not noble, turn against them, for they are your psychological driver. This is done by putting new feeling in their place. You cannot change your thinking until you change your feeling, and all feelings come from ideas. Your enemies are all those misplaced ideas that you accept as true. All that you consent to, all that you believe and accept as true, be it wise or foolish, forms the clothing you wear. But you can be reclothed and ascend to a higher level of being when you take up your cross and follow your imagination. Most of us are aimless. We want more than we presently have. We want the other person to change, but we don't want to do the one thing that will bring the change about, for we don't want to change ourselves. The gift of an abundant life is not given according to the work of another, but according to the work you do on yourself, and that work is to uncritically observe your reactions to life, as they bind you to a certain level. Disassociate yourself from your unpleasant thoughts and associate yourself with your aim, thereby rising to its level, for your ideal is on that vertical line you stand upon. You will never find your fulfilled desire until you are the desire. Those who go searching for love only make manifest their lovelessness, for we never have to search for what we are. In other words, we are forever conceiving of ourselves. The whole of human life is the appeasement of desire, and desire, conceived as fulfilled, will externalize itself. If you are not hungry enough to transcend your present level of consciousness, you will not conceive of anything greater. As long as you are in love with the state you are in, you cannot and will not rise from it. Without the vertical line of states, life would have no meaning. The ancients called this infinite series Jacob's ladder. You do not build this ladder, rather you climb it through self-discovery. Where I am is always what I am. Establish one I within yourself, not a number of I's. The I roots out all secondary causes and clears the mind of the power to enslave. Your belief in powers external to you is a tree which must be rooted out of your mind. Begin now to use the following technique, and you will realize every dream that you are destined to achieve. But first you must have a dream, a desire for something, as desire is your springboard of action. Define your objective. If it were fulfilled now, where would you be physically? What would the world look like? Would your wife, husband, mother, father, or friends see you differently? Feel their presence. See the joy expressed on their faces, and hear their congratulations. Repeat this act until you have a complete feeling of accomplishment. Then, having assumed the feeling of completion, remain faithful to it. For your assumptions contains within itself all of the plans and power necessary for externalization. You need do nothing special on the outside, for by your assumption, your mind is being rearranged, and what it confirms, it externalizes. Your desire may be for an improvement in your financial position, your social circle, or a deeper understanding of life's mysteries. The desire is up to you, but when put into practice, this technique will never fail you. Emerson once said, "We surround ourselves with the true image of ourselves, as every spirit builds for itself a house beyond its house, a world beyond its world. What you are is what you see. Therefore build yourself a world as you would like it to be, a world beyond the world now visible to you. The world you desire exists, and will unfold itself in great proportions when you, all spirit, surround yourself with the true image of yourself as you would like to be. Think of your world as a canvas with the pictures painted there by the arrangement of your mind. Your I amness, your consciousness, has already arranged as many patterns for your canvas as there are people walking the earth. Turn to yourself and, claiming that your desire exists, feel yourself move right into its center. Then paint your canvas of consciousness. Everything is there at your disposal. Its reality is up to you and the intensity of your desire. Always look to self, for your consciousness is the sole cause of the phenomena of your individual life. There will likely be times when you imagine something which never comes to pass, and you feel either that you have failed or that this technique doesn't work. But I will tell you there is only one cause for failure, and that is the absence of the feeling of naturalness. It takes time for an assumption to become a fact, and a desire is fulfilled proportionally to the degree of naturalness of the feeling of possession. If something does not feel natural to you, it is not your nature. When you ask, you must feel you already are that which you are seeking. You are forever surrounding yourself with the true image of yourself and what you are, that which only you can see, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. Observe your current reactions to life, and you are observing the being you want to separate yourself from. And then, as you begin to identify yourself with your chosen state, the separation takes place. But your assumption must be a maintained attitude, and if for a moment you lose the mood, recapture it. If you lose it again, feel yourself back into the feeling until the mood becomes so natural that thinking from that mood is normal. The great failure of most people who use this method is that they are perpetually constructing, but deferring their occupancy. When entering your desired state, feel its presence surround you like an answered prayer. Then become so one with the state that your thoughts flow from it. Persist in viewing your world from that state, and it will harden into fact. You and you alone determine the time for the state to externalize itself. If your mind is so disciplined that it cannot be turned or diverted, your heart's desire will be out-pictured on your screen of space. But if you believe in any secondary power, your belief will cause its delay. Your awareness is the power of the word. It is divine, not divisional. There are not two I ams, but one I am standing on many levels. You may think your name is John Brown or Mary Smith, but your real name is I am, and your dominant mood is your nature. Divorce a mood and assume a new nature. Persist in your new relationship, and you will bear its children, as new phenomena appear to bear witness to your creative inner I amness. Only if you constantly return to the mood you are attempting to divorce yourself from will failure occur. Desire is hidden identity. What you want, you already have. If you acknowledge as fact that you are already what you desire to be, and will not be diverted but maintain your state by walking in the mood of its fulfillment, which now dominates you, no power on earth can keep you from expressing it. But you must feel yourself right into the situation of the answered prayer, for only by believing that you already have it will it appear. Learn to rearrange your mind, and if you find yourself walking in the field of unanswered prayers, turn around and walk in the field, the mood of fulfillment. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Good news is desire fulfilled. If desire is not mixed with faith, it is of no avail, for faith is the awareness of the reality of the desire's fulfillment. In other words, creation is finished, and we only become aware of increasing portions of it. The absence of faith would be to deny the reality of the state assumed. If you limit yourself to your physical senses, which contradict everything you desire, then faith will be unknown to you. But faith can and will make real that which is invisible. The being you would like to be, though invisible, will unveil itself and become visible for all to see when you walk in the faith of its reality. The Inspirational Living podcast is a production of livinghour.org. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which will ensure that we can continue our podcast for years to come. To become a patron, please visit patreon.com. That's patreon.com. Simply do a quick search for the Inspirational Living podcast at patreon.com to find our Patreon page and learn more, including the free gifts we offer to every patron. Subscribe to our free podcast today at the iTunes Store or at Stitcher.com. For free transcripts of our podcast, please visit us online at podcast.livinghour.org. Thank you for listening. We look forward to being with you next time. Welcome to the Inspirational Living podcast, brought to you in part by Book of Zen, makers of wearable inspiration for a better world. This is our first podcast of 2016, and we would like to begin by thanking all the listeners who made our December launch so successful. If you would like to join others in helping us spread the word about the Inspirational Living podcast, you can do so easily by leaving us a quick positive review at the iTunes Store. Or you could share us on your Facebook page. Once again, thank you so much. Today's podcast is one we are sure you'll enjoy. It has been edited and adapted from a lecture delivered by Neville Goddard in 1952. The purpose of today's talk is to bring about a psychological change in you, the individual. Humanity, understood psychologically, is an infinite series of levels of awareness, and you, individually, are what you are according to where you are in the series. Consciousness is the only reality, and where you are conscious of being psychologically determines the circumstances of your life. The ancients knew this great truth, but our modern teachers have yet to discover it. There is only one substance in the world. Our scientists call it energy, while Scripture defines it as consciousness. It can be made to manifest itself as iron, steel, and wood, to name but a few things. People, seeing a variety of forms, think of numberless substances, but what is seen is only a change in the arrangement of the same basic substance, consciousness. Ephesians tells us that all things, when admitted, are made manifest by light. The word light, recorded here, means awareness, consciousness. Anything you, an individual, claim yourself to be it good, bad, or indifferent, right or wrong, must be made manifest in your world, for by claiming the state of being, you have consented to its life. There is only one cause, and that is consciousness. Your consciousness is the center from which your world mirrors and echoes the state you presently occupy. What is your state? It can be defined as all that you believe and consent to being as true. So, if you want your world to change, you must determine what you want to accept and consent to as true before you can change it. To arrive at a certain definition of self, you must begin by uncritically observing your automatic reaction to a particular event, for your reaction defines your state, and you can, without getting out of your chair, rebuild your world by changing your level or state of being. This is done by observing yourself uncritically as you react to life. If you do not like the circumstances of your life, acknowledge its cause. Be willing to admit that the circumstances are only objectifying what you are conscious of. Then change your consciousness, and your world will change. If you react to that which is being objectified, you bind yourself to a certain level of awareness. But if you refuse to react, the thread is broken. Stop reacting to unlovely things, for every unlovely thought causes you to walk in psychological mud. Rather, identify yourself with beauty, with love, with compassion and gratitude, and you will ascend the infinite level of your own being and change the circumstances of your life. Your state of awareness, like a magnet, attracts life. Steel, in its demagnetized state, is a whirling mass of electrons. But when the electrons are faced in one direction, the steel is magnetized. You do not need to add to the steel to make it magnetic, or take anything away to demagnetize it. This same principle is true for you. You can change your world by rearranging your thoughts and having them travel only in one direction, and that is toward the fulfillment of your desire. Watch your reactions to life, for any change in the arrangement of your mind, which can be detected by self-observation, will cause a change in your outer world. It is important to learn to be passive to that which is unlovely and unacceptable to you. In that way, you are awakening the dynamic spirit within, and when you find your inner being, you will discover that the qualities you condemn in others are really in yourself. Then you will know the secret of forgiveness, for as you forgive yourself, the others are forgiven. The moment you consent to a thought, it is made manifest to a certain degree. A thought cannot come into being unless you consent to its expression by being aware of it. The universe moves with motiveless necessity, as it has no motive of its own. Rather, it moves under the necessity of manifesting the arrangements of our minds. This teaching is to awaken you to your light, and the awakening begins by self-observation. If you have a secret affection for living in the mud of self-pity and condemnation, your world will mirror those feelings. But if you rearrange your mind and live with feelings of harmony and love, your manifested world will change. If today you would spend 5 minutes in uncritical observation of yourself, you would be surprised to discover how deceitful you are. It is a terrible shock, I know, but every shock of this type will let in the light of awareness, and life is an ever-increasing illumination. As the light comes in, you become more and more conscious of who you really are. There is only one cause for the phenomena of life. Only by observing your own consciousness can you discover the cause of what is happening to you. There is no greater tyrant than the belief in a secondary cause. Let that tyrant go by remembering the one and only substance, the only cause, which is awareness, and immediately change what you are aware of. Only by observing your reactions to life can you find yourself. And remember, as long as you react, you do. The same things must confront you, for all that you admit to is made manifest by your consciousness, and everything you manifest is your consciousness. Stop walking through the world in the mud and living in its basement. Your soul is made up of all that you consent to. Lose your soul on one level, and you will find it on a higher level, defined differently. Always examine yourself uncritically, for the moment you become critical, you automatically justify your reactions and associate yourself with the thing observed. Everything is individual. Collective security and collective salvation are terms approached individually. Learn to stand on your own feet and not on the feet of a group. You must free yourself and the only way to do that is to awaken your higher self, who is now sound asleep. Think noble thoughts based on noble concepts, and they will pay great dividends, for you will rise in consciousness and transform your world. Give yourself your daily bread by giving yourself the opportunity to remember who you are. Never envy the good fortune of another, simply appropriate your own. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by changing the ideas planted there. For you cannot change your thinking until you change the ideas from which your thoughts flow. Your individual state of consciousness is your level of being and attracts all of the events you encounter in life. Since your reactions determine what you are, any change in your outer world must be produced by your inner level of being. Remember that thoughts are things. When you identify yourself with a thought, it manifests itself as an act. If the thought is unlovely, it harms you. Awaken and select only thoughts that contribute to the birth of your desire. You must constantly observe your dwelling place, for where you are psychologically is what you are. Your mood indicates your state of being, and you are always externalizing the state upon which you stand. The Upanishads, one of a class of Vedic treatises dealing with broad philosophical problems, states, the soul, imagining itself into a state, takes upon itself the results of that state. Not imagining itself into a state, it is free from its results. Your soul is what you consent to. As you feel yourself into the situation of your answered prayer, you have entered a state, and your soul has taken upon itself the results of that state. If you do not enter the state, you are free of its lovely results. Accept an idea as true. Identify yourself with it, and it will manifest itself in your world. But if you do not accept the thought, nor identify yourself with it through feeling, you are free from its results. You must become very selective, and as I've said before, learn not to associate yourself with unlovely thoughts. I am is the self-definition of the infinite. Awareness, I amness, is the only power of the universe. Its power makes you alive. If you say, I am sick, you are. If you say, I am confident, you are. Feeling yourself into the situation of a given state, you must take upon yourself the results of that state of mind. All things are made alive from a state of mind. Without a state of mind, nothing can be made, as you only resurrect the state from which you identify. Where you are psychologically is what you are in reality. Therefore, if you catch yourself feeling sorry for yourself, stop it and start feeling happy. If you don't, you will identify yourself with the state of self-pity and manifest it. If you feel weak in any sense, affirm I am strong, and if you persist in that assumption, it will harden into fact. The reason that no one should ever take the name of the Lord in vain is because that name is I am. There is no one to blame but yourself for all of the things that you have felt in the past, are feeling now, and will feel in the future, as they could not come into your world unless you consented to them. Start now to consent only to lovely thoughts of fulfilled desires prior to their confirmation by your senses, and give up the animal instinct of suffering and wallowing in the feelings of hurt and self-pity. The psychological tongue is much like the physical one. If someone annoys you, turn aside and keep the tongue of your mind away from the sore spots of dislike, for your little mental conversations are the producers of your future. Sacrifice your body of suffering by giving it up and tame your mind. Clothe yourself with joy and good news, and you will walk through life wearing the immortal garment of love. There is a rhythm in your world which you cannot hear or see, and your aura, which is radiating your level of being, is like no one else's. Complacency is a curse. Control your imagination with steady attention, and dare to stand and be heard. Pay attention to your thoughts, and discipline them so that they flow from the feeling of your wish fulfilled. For you are not awake until the outer you becomes placid, and the inner you dynamic. Don't try to argue someone out of their misery. We are all given the power of the I to think, and everyone is allowed to think for themselves. All things, when admitted into consciousness, are made manifest, be they good, bad, or indifferent. Dare to stand on your own by this teaching, and you will never again feel the need to justify your failures, or view any goal as forever out of reach. The Inspirational Living podcast is a production of The Living Hour. For free transcripts of our podcasts, visit us online at livinghour.org. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by autosuggestion.io. Transform your life in 30 days. Discover the autosuggestion sound method at autosuggestion.io. And by Book of Zen, makers of wearable inspiration and motivational gifts. Visit them online at bookofzen.com. Subscribe to the Inspirational Living podcast by looking us up in the iTunes Store. If you're using an Android phone, download the Stitcher app and you'll find us on there. We deliver new podcasts twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to talking to you next time. Welcome to the Inspirational Living podcast, brought to you in part by Book of Zen, makers of inspirational fashion and gift ideas. Visit them online at bookofzen.com. Today's podcast has been edited and adapted from The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, published in 1954. Humanity's chief delusion is its conviction that there are causes other than our own state of consciousness. All that befalls you, all that is done by you, all that comes from you, happens as a result of your state of consciousness. Your consciousness is all that you think and desire and love, all that you believe is true and consent to. That is why a change of consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. Rain falls as a result of change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere. So, in like manner, a change of circumstance happens as a result of a change in your state of consciousness. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, for you think from your ideas. All transformation begins with an intense, burning desire to be transformed. The first step in the renewing of the mind is desire. You must want to be different and intend to be different before you can begin to change yourself. You must make your future dream a present fact. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. By desiring to be other than what you are, you can create an ideal of the person you want to be, and assume that you are already that person. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. The ideal you hope to achieve is always ready for an incarnation, but unless you yourself offer it human parentage, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, your attitude should be one in which, having desired to express a higher state, you alone accept the task of incarnating this new and greater value of yourself. In giving birth to your ideal, you must bear in mind that the methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. This is a point that is truly understood by probably not more than one person in a million. You know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing it and defining it, by thinking of it, whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it, only by thinking from it. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it. You must be like the moth in search of the flame, who, spurred on with true desire, plunges at once into the sacred fire, folding its wings within, till it becomes one color and one substance with the flame. Just as the moth, in its desire to know the flame, was willing to destroy itself, so must you, in becoming a new person, be willing to die to your present self. You must be conscious of being healthy if you are to know what health is. You must be conscious of being secure if you are to know what security is. Therefore, to incarnate a new and greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by that faith in this assumption, in confidence that this new value or state of consciousness will become incarnated through your absolute fidelity to the assumption that you are that which you desire to be. This is what wholeness means, what integrity means. They mean submission of the whole self to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in certainty that that new state of consciousness is the renewing of mind which transforms. There is no order in nature corresponding to this willing submission of the self to the ideal beyond the self. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the incarnation of a new and greater concept of self to come by a natural evolutionary process. That which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect obviously cannot be effected without such a state of consciousness. And in your ability to assume the feeling of a greater life, to assume a new concept of yourself, you possess what the rest of nature does not possess: imagination, the instrument by which you create your world. Your imagination is the instrument, the means, whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, and poverty is effected. If you refuse to assume the responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means, whereby your redemption, that is, the attainment of your ideal, can be effected. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. However, your nature is such that it is optional to you whether you remain in your present concept of yourself, a hungry being longing for freedom, health, and security, or choose to become the instrument of your own redemption, imagining yourself as that which you want to be, and thereby satisfying your hunger and redeeming yourself. The drama of life is a psychological one, in which all the conditions, circumstances, and events of your life are brought to pass by your assumptions. Since your life is determined by your assumptions, you are forced to recognize the fact that you are either a slave to your assumptions or their master. To become the master of your assumptions is the key to undreamed of freedom and happiness. You can attain this mastery by deliberate conscious control of your imagination. You determine your assumptions in this way. Form a mental image, a picture of the state desired, of the person you want to be. Concentrate your attention upon the feeling that you are already that person. First, visualize the picture in your consciousness. Then feel yourself to be in that state as though it actually forms your surrounding world. By your imagination, that which was a mere mental image is changed into a seemingly solid reality. The great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention, firmly and repeatedly focused on the object to be accomplished. It cannot be emphasized too much that by creating an ideal within your mental sphere, by assuming that you are already that ideal, you identify yourself with it, and thereby transform yourself into its image. Thinking from the ideal instead of thinking of the ideal. Every state is already there as mere possibilities, as long as we think of them, but they become overpoweringly real when we think from them. This is what the ancient teachers called subjection to the will of God, or resting in the Lord. And the only true test of resting in the Lord is that all who do rest are inevitably transformed into the image of that in which they rest, thinking from the wish fulfilled. You become according to your resigned will, and your resigned will is your concept of yourself, and all that you consent to and accept as true. By assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and continuing therein, you take upon yourself the results of that state. Not assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are forever free of the results. When you understand the redemptive function of the imagination, you hold in your hands the key to the solution of all your problems. Every phase of your life is made by the exercise of your imagination. Determined imagination alone is the means of your progress, of the fulfilling of your dreams. It is the beginning and end of all creating. Let me say once again, the great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention, firmly and repeatedly focused on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, until it fills the mind and crowds all other ideas out of consciousness. What greater gifts could be given you than to be told the truth that will set you free? And the truth that sets you free is that you can experience in imagination what you desire to experience in reality. And by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will become an actuality. You are limited only by your uncontrolled imagination and lack of attention to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. When the imagination is not controlled and the attention not steadied on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, then no amount of prayer or piety or invocation will produce the desired effect. When you can call up at will whatsoever image you please, when the forms of your imagination are as vivid to you as the forms of nature, you are the master of your fate. You must stop spending your thoughts, your time, and your money. Everything in life must be an investment, and that investment begins with your attention. Attention is forceful in proportion to the narrowness of its focus. That is, when it is obsessed with a single idea or sensation. It is steadied and powerfully focused only by such an adjustment of the mind as permits you to see one thing only, for you steady the attention and increase its power by confining it. The desire which realizes itself is always a desire upon which attention is exclusively concentrated, for an idea is endowed with power only in proportion to the degree of attention fixed on it. Concentrated observation is the attentive attitude directed from some specific end. The attentive attitude involves selection, for when you pay attention, It signifies that you have decided to focus your attention on one object or state rather than on another. Therefore, when you know what you want, you must deliberately focus your attention on the feeling of your wish fulfilled, until that feeling fills the mind and crowds out all other ideas from your consciousness. The power of attention is the measure of your inner force. Concentrated observation of one thing shuts out other things and causes them to disappear. The secret of success is to focus your attention on the feeling of the wish fulfilled without permitting any distraction. All progress depends on an increase of attention. The ideas which compel you to action are those which dominate the consciousness, those which possess the attention. The idea which excludes all others from the field of attention fuels the action. To the unenlightened person, this will seem to be all fantasy, yet all progress comes from those who do not take the accepted view, nor accept the world as it is. As was stated heretofore, if you can imagine what you please, and if the forms of your thought are as vivid as the forms of nature, you are, by virtue of the power of your imagination, master of your fate. Your imagination is you yourself, and the world as your imagination sees is the real world. When you set out to master the movements of your attention, which must be done if you would successfully alter the course of observed events, you realize how little control you currently exercise over your imagination, and how much of it is dominated by sensory impressions and by a drifting on the tides of idle moods. To help you master control of your attention, practice this exercise. Night after night, just before you drift off to sleep, strive to hold your attention on the activities of the day in reverse order. Focus your attention on the last thing you did, that is, getting into bed, and then move it backward in time over the events until you reach the first event of the day, getting out of bed. This is no easy exercise, but just as specific exercises greatly help in developing specific muscles, this will greatly help in developing the muscle of your attention. Your attention must be developed, controlled, and concentrated in order to successfully change your concept of yourself and thereby change your future. Imagination is able to do anything, but only according to the internal direction of your attention. If you persist night after night, sooner or later you will awaken in yourself a center of power and become conscious of your greater self, the real you. Attention is developed by repeated exercise or habit. Through habit, an action becomes easier, and so, in the course of time, gives rise to a faculty which then can be put to higher uses. When you attain control of the internal direction of your attention, you will no longer stand in shallow water, but will launch out into the deep of life. You will walk in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, as on a foundation more solid even than earth. The Inspirational Living podcast is a production of The Living Hour. For free transcripts of our podcast, please go to livinghour.org. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which will ensure that we can continue our podcast for years to come. To become a patron, please visit patreon.com. That's patreon.com. Simply do a quick search for the Inspirational Living podcast at patreon.com to find our Patreon page and learn more, including the free gifts we offer to every patron. Subscribe to our free podcast today at the iTunes Store, or at Google Play, or at Stitcher.com. Thank you for listening, We look forward to being with you next time. Welcome to the Inspirational Living Podcast. I'm currently on vacation for the holidays and unable to record a new podcast this week, so as a special holiday gift to our listeners, I am going to play for you a reading from our Sunday Talks, a weekly series that is available exclusively to our patrons. If you enjoy today's reading, please do consider becoming our patron. For as little as $3 a month, you can gain full access to this series of thought-provoking spiritual talks, as well as access to over 200 transcripts of the Inspirational Living Podcast. To learn more, please visit livinghour.org/patron. This episode of our Sunday Talks was edited and adapted from Prayer, the Art of Believing by Neville Goddard, published in 1945. Prayer is an art and requires practice. The first requirement is a controlled imagination. Ostentation and vain repetitions are foreign to prayer. Its exercise requires tranquility and peace of mind. The ceremonies that are customarily used in prayer are mere superstitions and have been invented to give prayer an air of solemnity. Those who do practice the art of prayer are often ignorant of the laws that control it. They attribute the results obtained to the ceremonies and mistake the letter for the spirit. The essence of prayer is faith, but faith must be permeated with understanding to be given that active quality which it does not possess when standing alone. Our Sunday talk today is an attempt to reduce the unknown to the known by pointing out conditions on which prayers are answered and without which they cannot be answered. The Universal Law of Reversibility is the foundation on which prayer is based. The injunction to pray, believing that you already possess what you pray for, is based upon a knowledge of the law of inverse transformation. If your realized prayer produces in you a definite feeling or a state of consciousness, then inversely, that particular feeling or state of consciousness must produce your realized prayer. Because all transformations of force are reversible, you should always assume the feeling of your fulfilled wish. You should awaken within you the feeling that you are and have that which heretofore you desired to be and possess. This is easily done by contemplating the joy that would be yours were your objective an accomplished fact, so that you live and move and have your being in the feeling of your realized wish. The feeling of the wish fulfilled, if assumed and sustained, must objectify the state that would have created it. This law explains why the Bible says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen," and why, quote, "He calleth things that are not seen, as though they were, and the things that were not seen become seen." Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and continue feeling that it is fulfilled, until that which you feel manifests itself. If a physical fact can produce a psychological state can produce a physical fact. If the effect A
can be produced by the cause B, then inversely, the effect B can be produced by the cause A. Therefore, as the Gospel of Mark says, whatever things you desire when you pray, believe that you have received them, and you shall have them. A clear concept of the dual nature of our consciousness must be the basis of all true prayer. Consciousness includes a subconscious as well as a conscious part. The infinitely greater part of consciousness lies below the sphere of objective consciousness. The subconscious is the most important part of consciousness. It is the cause of voluntary action. The subconscious is what you are. The conscious is what you know. Or as Jesus said, I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. The conscious and subconscious are one, but the subconscious is greater than the conscious. Jesus also said, I of myself can do nothing. The Father within me, He does the work. In other words, the I, the objective consciousness of myself, can do nothing. The Father, the subconscious, does all the work. The subconscious is that in which everything is known, in which everything is possible, to which everything goes, from which everything comes, which belongs to all, to which all have access. What we are conscious of is constructed out of what we are not conscious of. Not only do our subconscious assumptions influence our behavior, but they also fashion the pattern of our objective existence. The whole of creation is asleep within the deep of each person, and is awakened to objective existence by our subconscious assumptions. Within that blankness we call sleep, there is a consciousness in unsleeping vigilance. And while the body sleeps, this unsleeping being releases from the treasure house of eternity the subconscious assumptions of humankind. Prayer is the key which unlocks this infinite storehouse. It modifies or completely changes our subconscious assumptions. And a change of assumption is a change of expression. The conscious mind reasons inductively from observation, experience, and education. It therefore finds it difficult to believe what the five senses and inductive reasoning denies. The subconscious reasons deductively and is never concerned with the truth or falsity of the premise, but proceeds on the assumption of the correctness of the premise, and objectifies results which are consistent with the premise. This distinction must be clearly seen by all who would master the art of praying. No true grasp of the science of prayer can be really obtained until the laws governing the dual nature of consciousness are understood, and the importance of the subconscious is realized. Prayer, the art of believing what is denied by the senses, deals almost entirely with the subconscious. Through prayer, the subconscious is suggested into the acceptance of the wish fulfilled, and, reasoning deductively, logically unfolds it to its legitimate end. The subjective mind is the diffused consciousness that animates the world. It is the spirit that giveth life. In all substance is a single soul, the subjective mind. Through all creation runs this one unbroken subjective mind. Thought and feeling fused into beliefs impress modifications upon it, charge it with a mission, one which it faithfully executes. The conscious mind originates premises. The subjective mind unfolds them to their logical ends. We transmit ideas to the subconscious through our feelings. The subconscious transmits ideas from mind to mind through telepathy. Your unexpressed opinions and convictions about other people are transmitted to them without their conscious knowledge or consent, and if subconsciously accepted by them, will influence their behavior. The only ideas that other people subconsciously reject are your ideas of them which they could not wish to be true of anyone. Whatever they could wish for others can be believed of them, and by the law of belief which governs subjective reasoning, they are compelled to subjectively accept, and therefore objectively express accordingly. The subjective mind is completely controlled by suggestion, and ideas are best suggested when the objective mind is partly subjective, that is, when the objective senses are diminished or held in abeyance. This partly subjective state can best be described as controlled reverie, wherein the mind is passive but capable of functioning with absorption. It is a concentration of attention. There must be no conflict in your mind when you are praying. Turn from what is to what ought to be. Assume the mood of fulfilled desire, and by the universal law of reversibility, you will realize your desire. Prayers are not successfully made unless there is a rapport between the conscious and subconscious mind of the individual. This is done through imagination and faith. By the power of imagination, all people, especially imaginative ones, are forever casting forth enchantments, and all people, especially unimaginative ones, are continually passing under their power. Everything that can be seen, touched, explained, argued over, is to the imaginative person nothing more than a means to an end, for they function by reason of their controlled imagination in the deep of themselves, where every idea exists in itself and not in relation to something else. Within them there is no need for the restraints of reason, for the only restraint they can obey is the mysterious instinct that teaches them to eliminate all moods other than the mood of the fulfilled desire. Imagination and faith are the only faculties of the mind needed to create objective conditions. The faith required for the successful operation of the law of consciousness is a purely subjective faith and is attainable upon the cessation of active opposition on the part of the objective mind of the operator. It depends on your ability to feel and accept as true what your objective senses deny. It is not what you want that you attract. You attract what you believe to be true. Therefore, get into the spirit of these mental conversations and give them the same degree of reality that you would a telephone conversation. For as Jesus has said, if thou can believe, all things are possible. The acceptance of the end wills the means, and the wisest reflection could not devise more effective means than those which are willed by the acceptance of the end. If you are praying for others, mentally talk to them as though your desires for them were already realized. To change your world, you must first change your conception of it. To change a person, you must change your conception of them. You must first believe them to be the person you want them to be, and mentally talk to them as though they were. All people are sufficiently sensitive to reproduce your beliefs of them. Therefore, if your word is not reproduced visibly in the person toward whom it is sent, the cause is to be found in you, not in the subject. As soon as you believe in the truth of the state affirmed, results follow. Everyone can be transformed. Every thought can be transmitted. Every thought can be visibly embodied. With the knowledge of the law of reversibility, the disciplined person transforms their world by imagining and feeling only what is lovely and of good report. The beautiful idea they awaken within themselves shall not fail to arouse its affinity in others. To pray successfully, you must have clearly defined objectives. You must know what you want before you can ask for it. You must know what you want before you can feel that you have it. And prayer is the feeling of the fulfilled desire. It does not matter what it is you seek in prayer, or where it is, or whom it concerns. You have nothing to do but convince yourself of the truth of that which you desire to see manifested. Prayers depend upon your attitude of mind for their success, and not upon the attitude of the subject. The subject has no power to resist your controlled subjective ideas of them, unless the state affirmed by you to be true of them is a state they are incapable of wishing as true of another. In that case, it returns to you, the sender, and will realize itself in you. Provided the idea is acceptable, success depends entirely on the operator, not upon the subject who, like compass needles on their pivots, are quite indifferent as to what direction you choose to give them. If your fixed idea is not subjectively accepted by the one towards whom it is directed, it rebounds to you from whom it came. For example, a person who directs a malicious thought to another will be injured by its rebound if they fail to get the subconscious acceptance of the other person. In other words, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Furthermore, what you can wish and believe of another can be wished and believed of you, and you have no power to reject it if the one who desires it for you accepts it as true of you. The only power to reject a subjective thought is to be incapable of wishing a similar state on another person, because to give presupposes the ability to receive. Fools exploit the world, the wise transfigure it. It is the highest wisdom to know that in the living universe there is no destiny other than that created out of the imagination of humankind. There is no influence outside of the mind of humanity. In the words of the Apostle Paul, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Never accept as true of others what you would not want to be true of you. Lastly, remember this: to awaken a state within another, it must first be awake within you. The state you would transmit to another can only be transmitted if it is believed by you. Therefore, to give is to receive. You cannot give what you do not have, and you have only what you believe. So to believe a state is true of another not only awakens that state within the other, but it makes it alive within you. You are what you believe. The Inspirational Living podcast is a production of The Living Hour and brought to you by the generous financial support of our patrons. Become our patron for as little as $3 a month to gain access to free transcripts and the series Our Sunday Talks, which features thought-provoking readings on spirituality and spiritual growth. Thanks for listening. I look forward to talking with you next time. Welcome to Our Sunday Talks, an exclusive series for the patrons of the Inspirational Living podcast. Today's reading was edited and adapted from a lecture delivered by Neville Goddard in the 1950s. Your own wonderful human imagination is the actual creative power of God within you. It is your Savior. If you were thirsty, water would be your Savior. If you needed a job, employment would be your Savior. Your imagination is the power to save you from whatever circumstances you now find yourself. You can experience your heart's desire through the use of your imagination. Nothing is impossible to your imagination. Your imagination is unlimited in what it can accomplish. If you can imagine something, you can achieve it. The way to use your imagination creatively is this. Relax in a chair or on a bed and close your eyes. First, determine what it is you wish to experience. Then, in this state of complete relaxation, bring to mind the end result of what it is you desire. In other words, if you were seeking a promotion at work, the end result might be that people would congratulate you on your promotion. You might move to a larger office. You would enjoy an increase in pay. Take any one of these events and, with your eyes closed, actually hear your friends congratulate you on your promotion. Feel their hand in yours as they tell you how happy they are for you. By actually feeling that you are being congratulated, your imagination will go to work to bring about that state in your outer world. You need not be concerned about how this will be accomplished. Your imagination will use whatever natural means are necessary to bring it about. What you do in imagination is an instantaneous creative act. However, in this three-dimensional world, events appear in a time sequence. Therefore, it may take a short interval of time to realize in the outer world what you have just experienced in imagination. After you have performed this act in your imagination, open your eyes and go about your normal, natural affairs, confident that what you have done must come to fruition in your world. Make your inner conversations conform to your imaginal act. You have planted a seed, and you will soon see the harvest of that which you have sowed. When you go into your imagination, make sure that you are actually performing the action, hearing the words, touching the object, or smelling the aroma in your self-conceived drama. What you do in your imagination is not merely a daydream in which you see events in your mind's eye. You must enter the dream as if you were actually there. You must make then now, and make there here. To make this perfectly clear, imagine that you would experience driving a new car after you have achieved your goal. In that case, you would not merely see a new car in your mind's eye. You must actually enter the dream. Feel yourself seated behind the steering wheel. Smell the newness of the interior. Feel yourself enjoying a comfortable ride. Feel the happiness that would be yours after accomplishing your dream. That which you experience in imagination is an actual creative act. It is a fact in the fourth dimension of space, and will make its appearance in this three-dimensional world just as surely as planting a seed will result in the growth of a particular plant. Once you have planted this seed in your imagination, do not uproot it by being anxious about how it will be accomplished. Each seed has its own appointed time. Some seeds take a few days, others a little longer. Feel confident that what you have planted will appear in your world. Your imagination will draw all that it needs to make your dream an actual reality. If it takes others to play a part in order to accomplish your end, your imagination will draw that person into your drama to play his or her part in the sequence of events. Your only responsibility is to remain faithful to your imaginal act until you experience it in your outer world. You can repeat your imaginal act each night before falling asleep. In fact, you may wish to enact this drama over and over again until it feels normal and natural to you as you drop off to sleep. Your imagination will work out the means to realize your dream while your conscious mind sleeps. Bring your five senses into play as you perform your imaginal activity. Actually hear a friend's voice congratulating you, or feel yourself hugging that person. If you wanted a new piano, run your hand over the smooth wood, touch the keys, and listen to the sound. If you wanted to receive a dozen roses, actually smell the fragrance and touch their velvety petals. Finally, you must be persistent in attaining your desire. Continue to imagine what you want until you have actually obtained it. You do nothing else to obtain your desire. If it is necessary to take some action, you will be led to do so in a normal, natural manner. You do not have to do anything to, quote, help bring it about. Remember that it is God who is doing the work, and God knows exactly how to accomplish it. If you think of your desire during the day, give thanks that it is already an accomplished fact, because it is. You can be and you can have all that you desire to be and to have. There is no limit to what you can accomplish for yourself and others. It doesn't matter what your present circumstances are. The principle you have unconsciously used to bring about the undesirable conditions in your life can be consciously applied to make your every dream come true. God created the earth and all that is in it, and God said it was good. People have puzzled over these biblical statements for centuries. If we really understood the meaning, we would not be confused, nor would we feel anxious about our past, present, or future. The understanding of these two statements would enable us to realize that we alone control our actions and the circumstances of our life. Let us take the first statement. God created the earth and all that is in it. God is infinite. Therefore, God must have been before any form came into being. What substance could he have used to create all that exists? There can be only one answer. God created everything that exists from the only substance available, Himself. God, thought, consciousness, spoke the Word, and brought everything into being out of Himself. Everything you perceive is made of the one substance, God. The one substance back of everything is energy, and that energy is God, or the Word. Since God created all that is out of Himself, it follows that God is the Creator and the creation. God is expressing life through each and every one of us. It could not be otherwise. Let us take the second statement. God said that His creation was good. That statement has confused people who believe that if God is good, another power must have created that which is not good. Perhaps this statement can be understood more easily if you will think of the principle of mathematics. In adding the sum of 5 and 6, it is possible to obtain the incorrect answer of 12. To eliminate that possibility, the number 12 would need to be removed from the whole of numbers. It would therefore be impossible to add 6 and 6 and reach the correct answer of 12. You can see that by eliminating the possibility of a potential wrong answer, all numbers would eventually be eliminated, and mathematics would not be possible. However, just as mathematics exists and can be used by anyone who has gained an understanding of how to use the principles to obtain correct answers, so the principle of creation can be understood to obtain desired results. Because God has given all of us free will, you can choose the states you wish to occupy. God does not predetermine your fate, nor does God punish you for mistakes or misdeeds. Because a person may not understand the law of mathematics, they may be adversely affected when they make a mistake in adding or subtracting cash amounts. The law of mathematics is not punishing them. The law simply is and can be used correctly or incorrectly. God has allowed you complete freedom to choose that which you will encounter. When you come to the realization that you are God in form and expression, you will seek to experience greater good and nobler purposes for yourself and others. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is thought or imagination. God imagined the world into being, and became that which He conceived. This is the principle on which all creation rests. Since God became human to give us life, we must contain the same creative principle within ourselves. The kingdom of heaven is within you. We have created our personal world through thought. That which you think about with feeling, that which you believe to be true, and that which you imagine yourself to be or to have, is the cause of everything in your personal world. You may believe that there is some other cause. You may blame others for your problems. You may believe that the events were wrought by fate or chance. But if you are objective and observe your own beliefs and thought patterns, you will see that your world accurately reflects all that you believe to be true of yourself and others. Faith is the actual substance of that which is hoped for. It is the evidence of the thing you want which you do not see in the outer world. That which you want to do or be has already been created. Therefore, it actually does exist. It is possible to bring into your world anything in creation by your belief that you already have it. Faith that what you want is already a fact is the means by which you activate the invisible state. That state then is later reflected in your outer world. Faith or belief that you already are or have that which you desire is the only means by which to experience your desires. No limitation is imposed on that which you can have, except your failure to assume possession of the quality or thing desired. Welcome to our Sunday Talks, an exclusive series for the patrons of the Inspirational Living podcast. In celebration of Easter Sunday, today's talk has been edited and adapted from an Easter lecture delivered by Neville Goddard in 1954. You know the story of Good Friday. Jesus is in a garden. It's nighttime, and one called Judas comes in search of him, seemingly to betray him. He comes into the garden, and it's dark, so he asks the simple question, "Where is Jesus?" Then the voice in the dark answered, "I am he." We are told in the story they all fell to the ground. When they regained their composure, they asked the same question, "Where is Jesus?" Again the voice answered, "I have told you that I am he." This time Judas kisses him, and the voice said to him, "Now that you have found me, let all else go, but do not let me go, and what you have to do, do quickly." Then Judas goes out and commits suicide. Now, when you read this story, you might think that the drama took place in a garden. No, that drama must take place in the mind of you, for this is all about rebirth. Hidden in you, and bound hand and foot is a second you that rebirth loosens and lifts up. And that second you is God. So the mystery is all self, and the Bible uses the word mystery no less than 18 times. In Corinthians, Paul asks us to esteem him as a steward of mystery, and Timothy says, "Great is the mystery, God was manifest in the flesh." Paul also speaks of the greatest of all mysteries, the one hidden since the foundation of the world. Christ in you is the hope of glory. Christ in you, not Christ in the pages of history, but God in you must be awakened. Look into your own mind's eye and know exactly what you want in this world. When you know what you want, in place of what you are, then you are seeing your Savior, the divine within you. Remember that the Good Friday story can be summed up in the statement, "Don't let me go, but let all else go." Disengage yourself from the whole vast belief that you formerly entertained, and hold on in your imagination to the concept that you are the person that you want to be, which in turn will take you toward Calvary. Calvary means fixing in your mind's eye on that state of being, and that will lead towards Easter, or this wonderful day that we speak of as the resurrection. For you will resurrect and make alive the divine state that began only as a concept. If you remain faithful to the concept, you will be led right into the fulfillment of that state, which in the Bible is called rebirth. Jesus once said, "Except you be born again, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." A wise man replied, "How is it possible a man my age may once again enter my mother's womb and be born again?" Jesus said, "You are a master of Israel and you do not know? Except you be born of water and the Spirit, you can in no way enter the kingdom of heaven." Then he gives an additional clue. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. As Moses lifted up the serpent. Do you think a man lifted up a brazen serpent as told in the story, and that everyone looked on it was instantly healed, and those who would not look were not cured? It's not any serpent. A serpent is the symbol of the power of endless self-reproduction. For the serpent sheds its skin, and yet does not die. We must be like the serpent, who grows and outgrows. We must learn the art of dying that we may live. By laying down all that we now believe, we lift ourselves up to the belief that we are what we want to be. That's how we do it. So, the great mystery is that at Bethlehem, God became as we are, so that at Calvary, the hill of the crucifixion, we may become as He is. And Calvary is an opportunity that comes every day in the life of a man and woman. When you walk the earth and you see anyone in need, ask yourself what would be the solution to that individual's problem. Just what would it be? You can grant it. If you know who you really are, you can grant it. We all wait for some little event called death, and we think that is dying. That isn't really dying, for the simple reason that that kind of death does not bring about a transformation. For there is no transformation in a physical death, but there is a transformation in mentally dying and dying daily. So, if you have learned the art of dying, you have learned the art of living, for we are immortal and we must die endlessly. For life is a creative idea, and it will find itself only in changing form. If we do not change and grow and outgrow, and grow and outgrow, then we know nothing of the mystery of Easter. For Easter is really the greatest of all mysteries. It's when we awaken God, the Christ within ourselves. That's the story of Easter. Do you wonder why Jesus called himself the vine? He said, "I am the vine, and you are the branches. Unless the branch be rooted in the vine, it has no life." Well, every person in the world is a branch, rooted in Christ, the vine, and Christ ends in me, as I am rooted in and end in God. Now, that can be said of every person in the world. While you listen to me and can hear me, you too can say it. Although I have just made the claim you are rooted in me, you can claim that I am rooted in you, and I end in you, as you are rooted in and end in God. If you know this, then it is your duty to lift up every woman and man in this world. Not one must be discarded. Everyone must be redeemed, and your life is the process by which this redemption is brought to pass. Discard no one. Every person can be changed, and you have the power to change them by taking the person and seeing them as they appear to be, and then asking what they would like to be instead of what they seem to be. When you know what they would like to be, then you imagine that they are that person already. Turn to a loved one and commune with the loved one concerning this individual, just as though it were a fact. When you do it, trust it, touch it, and believe it, and I will tell you that person will become the embodiment of what you have imagined them to be. This is Easter, and Easter comes not once a year. Easter is a daily opportunity to simply die that you may live. For Jesus said, "If anyone would come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." Well, how can I take up my cross and follow after this idea? First, I am told I must deny myself. Usually, people think that this means giving up something they love, giving up the pleasures of the table, or giving up something of which we are especially fond. It hasn't a thing to do with giving up external things. It is that we must deny ourselves, and a person's true self is made up of the sum total of all that we believe, all that we accept as true, all that we consent to. So if I consent to a pessimistic view of life, then I must deny that concept, that self, and put in its place the embodiment of optimism. When I do that, I can follow after this idea. You can take this principle and apply it to everything in this world. If it's not some tangible thing on earth you want, take some noble concept of a man or woman. Take that person who you would love to see in the world. Dream of that person actually walking this earth, and identify yourself with that individual. Associate yourself in your own imagination with that, as if you were them. When you actually feel that you are that person and continue in that state, then things begin to unfold to bear witness to the truth of your assumption. Go ahead and try it. So let us remember, Easter is the art of dying so that we may live, which reminds me of that wonderful poem on the death of Abdallah, and what he said at the end of it all. He appeared again among all the mortals, as they were weeping and kissing his worn-out body. In spirit he said, "I am not the thing you kiss. Cease your tears and let it lie. It was mine, it is not I."